Well, well, well. Here we are, folks. The New Mexico books. One of the last major sections. It's one that I don't look at as much as I would like to because it's near the little room where the cat's litter boxes are. And I guess it smells okay now. I've got all these like Glade plug-in type things around. And I clean up and stuff. But like, I really want to sit in that chair, you know? I was thinking like, would it be better if I moved the chair over there and put both the bookshelves there? Anyway, who cares? Books are for nerds. That fossil was found in a rock pile on my parents' property back when they got a bunch of rocks delivered for some landscaping. It's your grandpa. Etch sketch. Surprisingly challenging. This Tetris thing hanging up here, so you might as well have a theme with a corner, you know. I say as I then look at 15 totally different things. Anyway, all right, who's ready to look at a bunch of books? Remember, the description of this channel on the About page is that it's a look at the world of literature through one person's collection. And collections are going to have more localized elements, you know, reflecting their owners, and nuanced things. Like, did you all know composer John Cage had the world's largest collection of books about mushrooms? It's amazing. He had like every book ever written about mushrooms. And Jack Williamson's sci-fi library was so big it became Portalis College's libraries, I should say. Well, let's start with this short shelf where stuff's just stacked up. Subscribe. Alright. Let's look at some books. Here we have, first of all, could this be called a book? Well, Ann Carson has a book that's all loose leaf things, so that greatly blows apart what a book can be. It doesn't have to be bound. You can jumble the chapters up. It can come in a box. I'm watching this YouTube video about books as the technology that replaced the scroll, and how scrolls were frustrating because you had to unroll them all the way to get to the stuff at the end. So books were like this, an amazing advancement in technology. Like, that's awesome. And it was talking about books in really grandiose terms about, like, books began in, help me think about this. Books began as kind of a bureaucratic tool in ancient times, or the written word did. People just needed to keep records, you know, of transactions and so on. And that, you know, grew in complexity over time. But it's kind of been this technology that's driven human development, the written word, and been a parallel evolution alongside it. Books and humanity, just like cats and humanity and dogs and humanity. Parallel evolutions, benefiting and accompanying. Books, books are when we became like a superpowered hive mind of a species, you know, like suddenly we could transmit information across time. And maybe books itself will become a form that technology will cast off and they'll become uncommon. Everything will be digital. Nowadays, books are being banned. Books are going out of print. I think the collection actually has value, you know? That's a little sci-fi library right there. That's a little science book library right there. If I ever let anyone in here, that could be a resource to the community. For now, it's just a resource to me. And if you watch this channel, maybe like a source of books you would like to get. I've been cultivating the DVD collection lately too. Squirrel's permission, of course. Wait, let's look at these cards. Yeah, I remember that tricentennial. It was the year 2006. 300 years from the day a little village was founded. And the city hilariously built 2 towers to commemorate the tricentennial. I'm like, it was right there. Come on, go for 3. But these card sets keep turning up. I've had several, and they actually have information that's kind of rare and were put together by really smart people with the Historical Society. It was in these cards that I learned that the KKK, the hate group, came to Albuquerque in the early 1900s. Maybe one count on that card. And they burned a cross near UNM, and nobody joined up though, or almost nobody, and it was a big failure. And because New Mexico is kind of a multicultural state, this is all Albuquerque trivia. So go Albuquerque, reject and hate, you know. Albuquerque has an interesting, it's a very multicultural place with all these different waves of history, and people are generally pretty chill in that way, though racist gangs exist, etc. Hello, kitty. How did Albuquerque grow in the first century? Despite smallpox epidemics and attacks by the Comanches by 1789, 1,347 people were living in Albuquerque, one-third of which being children. In 1822, the population had grown to 2,302 in Albuquerque proper. See, that's the kind of fun fact you can only get right here, folks. But really, Albuquerque is much older than 300 years, because this was the valley of Tigüe, settled circa 1200, with distant chapters before that in the era of Folsom and Clovis peoples. But Albuquerque is the oldest continuously inhabited major urban center in America. For 800 years, people have been living continuously right here. Continuously, that's what makes it so cool. And for the longest time, it was Tigüe, the place of the people of the Tewa. I'm glad to have this. And when I have a little pile of books, it's like a little hat. Now, this is a great book. You gotta have this if you like birds and you live in New Mexico. Hey, what's that bird? Oh, here it is. Or wherever you live, you have something like that for there. But you know, every time you see a book like this, even if it's in a series or something like that, it's probably a labor of love from some obsessed person. Never forget sleeping underneath the picnic table on the at a shelter on the Appalachian Trail. Not at a shelter, just under a picnic table. I woke up to like a big crowd of birders, and they were all staring up with their binoculars into the trees. I was like, hi. Gave me binoculars, and soon we were pals. This is a very cool book, I think. Well, it's also doing its little bit of a part to normalize the activities of the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the way that Native people were treated and when they were sent away to boarding schools, etc. My podcast, City on the Edge, which is the only Albuquerque history podcast that I know of, did an episode on the Albuquerque Indian School, as it was called, that was really interesting and often sad. I mean, it was very tragic, of course, in the beginning. For instance, there were stories like a young girl being killed when she was running away, shot when she was running away, and a dad who went to get his daughter out of the place being beaten really severely. Of course, the whole thing was kind of genocidal in its cultural erasure of taking these kids away, and it's too bad. I mean, for all that the early United States modeled itself on ancient Rome, they should have taken a page of letting the peoples of the place be their own people, you know? That was part of Rome's conquering power, honestly, was that they let people kind of keep their identity as long as they paid taxes and let the roads come through. Honored Caesar and whatnot. But it was just, yeah, there were all kinds of racist catchphrases and stuff applied. But what's interesting about the Albuquerque Indian School, though, is that it was eventually gained control of by Native American tribes. And not all the memories associated with it are bad. And this is an interesting little book. And it's also, oh, look at this. Old graffiti from a kid. Ha ha ha. I it. Lindava. Do you want some anything, maybe? How interesting. To a little Pueblo girl. But one of the reasons I hold on to this also, aside from it just being a really interesting artifact, it was in my the collection of kids' books for a long time, but it's really an antique. is that the photos in it are from central New Mexico. And I know there are shots you can like see the volcanoes in. I think this was shot around like Laguna Pueblo, maybe, the photos for this. Which is not far outside of Albuquerque. Now, this book is not particularly about Albuquerque or New Mexico, as those cases are. It is about the desert, though, and I think it seems appropriate to be over there with those books. Probably a map in here that includes New Mexico. But this book I bought at a garage sale in the very early 2000s, and look at this, 1958. It's an antique. But I took these 4 chapters and made them the structure of an essay that I wrote during that time, or about that time. Deserts, animals in the desert, plants in the deserts, people in the desert, but in particular about this time when I was out in being in the desert as a hermit in Apache County, Arizona, and I got chased out by a wildfire. I had this 14-foot travel trailer by a windmill near a cattle pond, and I was riding. I wrote a few different things, and I read all of Don Quixote. And he was just so cute. But this is a beautiful, somewhat kitschy kids book. It has a phrase in it that I still think about. The desert land is wasted land. And I'm like, I guess in a sense that's true. If there were things being grown on all the deserts of the world then that were benefiting humans, then that would be some sort of good, I suppose. But the desert is also a beautiful, complex ecosystem too. And there's areas of it that I feel like just like vast stretches of it probably that we should just let be. It's beautiful and fascinating and amazing, and in many ways one of my very favorite landscapes. I used to say, the desert's my religion, man. But I wrote an essay with the same title called The True Book of Deserts. That's what this is called. And if you go to the Unoya Review, which is an online site, you can read that. And a more polished version of that will be a chapter in my book. The True Book of Deserts, and it uses those 4 chapter divisions as it tells me what to write about. So here I write about just the area, the desert. Here I write about the animals, and because if you think about any nonfiction time in your life, any time you've lived, if you use these as your themes, you'd find something to say, especially if you were living in the desert. Animals in the desert, plants in the desert, people in the desert. And that's a cool piece of writing. I haven't reread that one in a while. It's in the book I've been working on for 15 years. It's also about getting engaged the first time in my life, and religious stuff that I was still dealing with. But that's a cool book, yeah. This one I'm happy to own. It's also a kid's book and has been in the kids section in the past. However, I have it because this same author wrote Pack Rat School, which I'm particularly interested in because it's about this little school out in Juan Tomas, a tiny town in the Manzano Mountains that I've written about. Lady Laura Atkinson used to work for Albuquerque Public Schools back in the day. I've read a lot about her in old newspapers and so on. And Pack Rat School is so interesting to me because it's about this little school in the mountains that was called Juan Tomas, where a pack rat would always trade little treasures with the kids, and the kids would leave things and trade them with this pack rat, and it became like their school mascot. It's a really cute, amazing story, and that's true. And when she was with APS, she wrote about all that. But what was so weird is I remember being read Pack Rat School when I was in kindergarten at Curry Elementary School in Arizona, and being like, I love this story, it's so great. And which is wild because it was like a small publisher like this one. And Pack Rat School is really rare and hard to find, and so I have not been able to track down a copy, even when I wrote a whole article on Juan Tomas, which is the subject of an episode of my podcast, City on the Edge, that I co-host. But Laura Atkinson also did, I don't know what this is about. It sounds like it's about animal abuse. They tie a horny toad to a kite and put it up there? No, I read it. It's about a kite shaped like a horny toad. He also facilitated and kind of wrote as a work of collage, really, if you think about it, this book, Fiestas in Our Mountain Villages, which is one of my one of the great resources on the Sandia Mountains and their history. And I wrote the book Towns of the Sandia Mountains about the Sandias. A good example of this is in my book, Towns of the Sandia Mountains. That, if you watch the book, the section about books for younger readers, there's the book Honey Girl that I saw that author, or I took a class that author taught. I always say, a good example of this is in my book, Honey Girl. So here I am doing the same thing. This was not all my resources. This was as long as they would let me make the bibliography. I pushed every limit. Like, they told me that my word count was way too high, but I was like, but I met all the individual caption word counts. And I had to threaten backing out that I was so upset before they let me go ahead with it. So my book has an unusually high word count. It's one of them, their photo histories. Look, Children of the Mountain Villages. I cite that one. I consider that one of the important canonical Sandia texts, because it's all these little kids in their classes doing this teacher-directed assignment, which was directed at its root by the people behind APS, like Laura Atkinson. I've subbed at A. Montoya Elementary up there, which is one of these schools in the mountain villages, and they still have the old school bell from the late 1800s hanging up in a little glass case in the front lobby. It's pretty cool. But this is like a really key, excellent reference. Look at this. These are tiny little towns that nobody bothered to document almost ever. And so I'm jumping ahead to this one because this is from the booklet section down there. But Laura Atkinson, sometimes people come into the world of literature in really wild ways, and they leave a mark and they do things, and they're part of the big story and the big narrative, and who knows how their work will live on or influence. Everything's a domino in the unending, infinite number of chains of dominoes thing we got going here. Okay. To be honest, TBH, I just set this one on top of these other two books. It was not supposed to be part of the tableau, but I just moved this over from the weird books section because I think it's more New Mexico than it is weird books. It does have a chapter on this, early UFO sighting. It sounded like a blimp having a tea party over the town of Galisteo, and that's a really wild story. Supposedly the museum in Galisteo has all these teacups and flowers from it that fell, and way before that technology should have existed. It seemed like people had taken a blimp from Asia and flown over this little town, and it's a big part of the town lore. And this is written by a reputable historian. He was the state historian, in fact. I found the oldest known European inscription at the north end of the Sandias. Sounds like an insane boast, but it's true. It's from the 1581 Chamuscata Rodriguez expedition. It says Juan de Santa Maria, and there's a wall of crosses. I found many other supporting carvings as well. But when I first found that, he gave a quote to the Albuquerque Journal about being excited about it, because he was the state historian at the time. I was really excited because I had read this book and some other things by him. Because I'm a nerd for where I live. Mexico really is cool. There's a special quality to the air that's brought painters here. It's sociologically, I think it's an example of the cultic milieu where everything pushed to the side mixes together and becomes something new and different, both imaginatively and otherwise. It's like the void in the Marvel movies. It's this place of where everything gets dumped and left. Test the bombs there, generate the power there, send the smartest scientists there. It's a genuinely strange place, and I know maybe it's just confirmation bias from living here, but it seems like there's always a mention of New Mexico or Albuquerque in everything. And that was part of my daughter Sonora's conviction that she was in a Truman Show type scenario for a while there. It's like, and why is Albuquerque mentioned every town, in every movie maybe? What a classic figure you are, Sweet Pea. Look at you. She can get me to get those blinds up with a look. I think I got gluten dosed. Dang it. Ate breakfast at a place, and they assured me it was all gluten-free, but I had a gluten allergy ever since my house got shot up in June of 2022. Crazy. Apparently trauma can do that. What? You can just tell when something has gluten in it. It's got this kind of slimy, gelatinous look to it. I'm not against it. I'm not saying wheat shouldn't be called the staff of life. I'm just shaking my fist at the fates for taking me, whose favorite food was pizza and favorite recreational beverage was beer, once in a while, hanging out with friends, to never being able to partake of either again. Pizza, though, that's the big loss. and some pasta. One of these books does not belong here, honestly, but it's here because I thought it was cool that they both had the same title. Both these books are called River of the Sun.